Hey guys, thank you. Welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. I'm glad to have you here. Before we get going, I just want to mention one of the new things. If you want more from this podcast, if you want to see more behind the scenes, if you want to hear more from the articles and stuff that I write, check out in the notes behind the wall. It's a new thing that started with the Prison Officer Podcast where we have a little more conversation. I really enjoy some of the people that have jumped in there. I've got Trey and Ivan, Kathy, James, a lot of you have jumped in there and got this conversation started, so I'm happy about that. And as always, I want to mention Pepperball. You know, Pepperball's been a sponsor of the Prison Officer Podcast for a really long time, and we appreciate them and what they do. And now let's get on with the show. Today, it's going to be kind of a different thing than what I've done. I've never really got into politics too much, but this is so important, I think, that it's not politics, it's legislation, even though we depend on our politicians sometimes to do this for us. But I've brought in a gentleman named Jeffrey Noble, and he's a longtime warden administrator. He's got 39 years of experience in corrections and public safety. He was a correctional officer, he was a case manager, unit manager, legislative chief analyst, deputy warden. He's done it all the way from the bottom to the top through the ranks. And he's one of the people who's pushing to get this law that we're going to talk about. Right now, he's working as a certified PREA auditor, ACA auditor. He's been a delegate on an international corrections exchange with Moldova, where they collaborated on strategies to advance global security and rehabilitation standards. He also serves as a criminal justice instructor at Sinclair and Southern State Community College, bringing theory to practice to prepare the next generation, so important, of leaders into corrections. So, welcome to the Prison Officer Podcast, Jeff. I'm glad to have you on here.
Thank you for taking your time.
Oh, absolutely. Before we get started into the subject today, tell me a little bit about your career. How'd you get into corrections?
Well, in 1986, I started as actually a youth leader. I worked there part-time when I was going to college. Got hired as a correctional officer at the end of 1986. Worked at Pickaway Correctional Institution as an officer. Got promoted to a case manager there. So I spent 8 years at Pickaway at that time. Moved over as a case manager to Madison Correctional Institution. My boss, he went over as a deputy warden, kind of coaxed me into coming over there.
These are all in Ohio, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in Ohio. And was a case manager and a unit manager at that facility for 6 years. And that was, again, Pickaway was a level 1 and 2, which in Ohio, that's level 1 being the lowest, level 5 being the highest. That's a supermax.
Right.
Moved over to Madison. It was a level 3. So worked there for 6 years. Went back to Pickaway as what they call a unit management administrator. That's over the unit management. Did that for 5 years. Got promoted to the warden's assistant there for 2 years. Went to London as a deputy warden and was kind of all the deputy warden's administration, special services, and operations for 9 years. Got promoted to warden there. Was there about a year and a half. And that's a level 1 and 2. And got moved over across the street. Madison's right across the street from London.
Okay.
So got moved over there as a warden, was there for about 2.5 years. And at that point, I was 34 years in the system. So I thought, it might be time to, and I got offered a job with the state legislature here in Ohio that they have what they call the Correctional Inspection Committee, which oversees the prisons, like goes on tours, writes reports for state legislators. They've since defunded that and moved it to another agency, so I'm out of that. But I was doing that for 5 years. I was a deputy director of that. So that got me, I seen every prison in Ohio, adult and juvenile. We toured every one of them. So that got me a lot more experience as far as seeing different things, different prisons, how they do things.
So you went right into corrections out of college?
Yeah. Actually, I went to High University and was looking for a job, was getting to the end of the line, and they offered me. And I think everybody in corrections, you get into it, you're like, I'll get into this and maybe get out of it in a few years. But I stayed in it for 39 years. So
well, that's what I was going to ask you.
So
what kept you in corrections for 39 years?
There's a lot of things. Like we've talked in before, there's not any better people than corrections people. I mean, I'm kind of biased, you know what I mean? But the reality is, some of my closest friends I worked with, and they've been friends throughout my career, and it's challenging. You know as well as I do, facilities. I mean, I worked again level ones and twos, threes and four. They're two different types of facilities.
Sure.
Internally, you learn a lot from just a different. I mean, ones and twos are mindsets more rehabilitation. Or actually, they probably are not coming. A lot of them's not coming back. Where threes and fours are just your criminals that are more struggling. Another thing I learned at London, we had a big farm and we had a big it's crazy how prisons, we had a big water treatment plant and a sewage plant. I learned more about water treatment and sewage. You would think that's not, but we supplied, like 9,000 people with water and sewage. So you learn more about lift stations and clarification. So that was educational. And obviously the farm, we had 3,000 acres and a big dairy farm. So, and I grew up, grandfather was farmers, not quite that scale. I kind of knew how to drive tractors and how to bale hay and, you know what I mean, things like that.
Absolutely. So is Ohio still doing some of that? Do they still have the farms?
No,
Wow.
I was deputy warden. That's a sore spot with a lot of people.
Yeah.
They phased them out. Now they basically cash rent all their properties. And
Wow.
the issue with that, I can tell you, people get upset, but I'm sure your audience, it got harder and harder to place people outside the fence because, I mean, community corrections facilities have done a pretty good job of diverting low-level offenders to the counties here in Ohio. So most of the guys that come to us have violated probation, which kind of rules you out of working outside the fence. You absconded supervision. You didn't report to your parole officer. So that made it very difficult to get people out. And Ohio is historically an agricultural community. It's changed a lot because bigger farms produce much more stuff. It was a great experience when I first started. I mean, I always said that the farms teach a guy a work ethic. I
Absolutely.
mean, and that's what we do miss because at London was the biggest prison farm in the state of Ohio, and guys worked.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
in an
Missouri,
ops management facility.
we had the same thing in Missouri. Matter of fact, there for a long time, Missouri took care of itself almost as far as corrections. We had a Ren's farm that did vegetables. I think Algoa did beef. You had Church Farm that did dairy, and so they kind of took care of themselves. And I did see, just like you said, the work ethic. One thing about living and growing up on a farm, I know the same thing you do. I was around farms my whole life. You learn work ethic. You learn what it's like to get up in the morning. You can't let the animals wait. There's no sleeping in today and that kind of stuff. So I think we're
Yeah,
going to miss that. But I understand
yeah.
what you're saying.
My grandfather always said, "If you're lazy, it's not going to be my fault."
Right. So
He used to tell me and my brothers that.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about what you've been very passionate about, what you've been working with for a while, and that is Andy's Law. Can you kind of walk me through what led up to that, the incident, and I'll let you talk about that.
Okay, Andy's Law kind of came into play on Christmas Day, 2014, at Ross Correctional Institution. That's in South Central Ohio, Chillicothe, Ohio. Andy Lansing was a 62-year-old correctional officer.
Mm,
He was working overtime that day for Christmas. He was beaten and killed by an inmate at the Ross Correctional that day. I mean, a side note, met Andy one time, great guy. He was in the military. He served over in Iraq.
hmm
He went over the prison delegation, served in the military, come back, and I mean, he had a break in service. He worked for the Department of Corrections, went over there for a while, came back, and he worked. He was in the military prior. That day he was working. Side note was he was working overtime. His kid's going to college to be a pharmacist,
right.
and he was working overtime to help pay for his college. And he was about 3 years from retirement.
Mm.
So I shout out to Mark Johnson. I mean, he's a state representative here in Ohio. Great guy. And, you say stuff about politicians, he answers a bell. And he called me that day and wanted me to go down because we mentioned earlier, prison people have slang.
Mm-hmm.
And as a representative, he didn't understand what they were complaining about. A lot of times he wasn't somebody, which in my job, that's what I did. So we went down, talked to people, tried to get a better handle on what was going on. And it took off from there. A lot of staff were complaining about issues. Me seeing all the prisons, there's a need to address some issues in Ohio.
What were some of those issues?
I mean, some of them, are not related to the prison management, but just, I'm sure prisoners, when I started spitting on officers or throwing feces on officers, was not.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's a common practice now.
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
When I started, there were consequences to that. That's why it didn't
Well,
happen as much back then.
Well, we talked about that. In the past, I mean, I remember working in segregation as an officer. That happened very seldom, but if it did, you're looking at higher security for sure. And you're looking at what we call local control 180 days, and that's went away.
Mm-hmm.
The accountability is just not there like it used to be.
I've heard people say, well, that's part of the job. I've literally heard people say that, and it's not part of the job. And anybody that's listening that thinks it's part of the job, I challenge you to go to, I guess I shouldn't say this because somebody will do it and then try to sue me, but walk into the mall and spit on a police officer. That's an assault. And in our correctional facilities, that's not treated as an assault most of the time. That's treated as part of the job. Getting slimed, getting stuff thrown on you. Oh, well, you work in prison. That's part of the job. And it never should be thought of as part of the job. We have a lot of prosecutors that won't prosecute it across the nation.
We have a mixed bag, and the part of this law was to clear that mess because there are prosecutors to defend some of them. They prosecute. Give you an example. I was a warden at Madison, London, which is Madison County. That county took every case.
Good.
And it's not a rich county, but that prosecutor, basically took every case, and it was how would you say, it was challenging for the county because they're not a rich county, so they don't have a lot of money in the coffers. And then there's others that, like you said, that'll go, and not. I mean, and it's gotten worse. I mean, just in the last month, there was an officer or one of our youth centers. They've got feces thrown on 2 days.
Yeah.
They're a new officer. You know as well as I do, that officer's not going to be there. That's what I tell legislators. And similar to what you said, we were just meeting with a senator last week, and we were talking about his aides, and we were talking about it, and they're like, well, how big a deal is it? I said, well, if somebody come here and threw feces on you, would you keep coming to work, or would you start looking for another job?
Sure.
And that's what's happening in corrections. They're not griping. They're and that's a traumatic event. So
absolutely,
that's something that's in that law. And obviously, in Ohio, the situation with Lansing, that guy is subject to, he could be tried for the death penalty here. But we wanted to stiffen that murder charge up to a minimum of, life without parole. And
which guy?
Make sure the guy that killed Andy Lansing,
okay,
or at least accused. His trial has not been. I don't want to talk a lot about it, but it's not. It's in the process of still working itself out. So he could be subject to the death penalty. We just wanted to add to that aggravated murder charge a mandatory life without parole if he is found, and at least 10 years at a higher security facility.
Right.
That's one issue that has been a problem.
Well, and a lot of
exposing
people.
himself.
Let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of people listening won't understand why that's so important. These days, the push is, especially in the last several years, the push is to get offenders pushed down in custody as quick as possible. The Second Chance Act has a lot of that in it. They're trying to get the offender pushed down into lower custody. So, and I've seen it, and you've seen it. well, we need more inmates over here, so we'll just drop their custody and push them out of the way. What you're talking about is that's going to, someone who's done something as heinous and as violent as attack a correctional officer or correctional staff is going to stay where they belong in a maximum security prison for at least 10 years before they ever have a chance to come down in custody, correct?
Yes, and you hit it on the head. In Ohio, again, our classification system, every inmate's reviewed once a year
Mm-hmm.
for an upgrade, downgrade. It's got to the point where they're looking at numbers, not behavior.
Right.
And part of this bill, we've been stressing this is a behavior based. If you need more beds at level 3, that's what you create, because reality is it's behavior based. And in Ohio, and I'm sure everywhere, there has been a push to deal. I mean, we currently got people that probably should be level 3s at level 2s.
Sure.
We got people at level 3s should be level 4s. I would argue this guy that was involved with Andy Lansing probably should have been a 4 prior to the situation happening.
So he's had a past history of violence.
Yeah, yes. I mean, he's in for felonious assault.
Yeah.
And I'll add, I mean, I was read a newspaper where his uncle said he was violent. So I don't know about you. That's enough for me. I mean, when your immediate family says, "Hey, this doesn't surprise me,"
Sure. Sure.
pretty much answers it. But that's part of the bill. Life without parole, the higher security. Another thing, exposures. We got more female staff.
Mm-hmm.
And exposures, like you mentioned earlier, basically, a lot of them are just treated as a rule infraction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a felony. And give you an example, we had one guy expose himself 164 times at one of our higher security facilities to women. And my job as CI, so we'd go around and talk to people, and obviously they were concerned about that. And again, staffing issues, that relates, they leave. If you don't do nothing about it, who signs up for that? We've put that in the bill.
Yeah. The in the Bureau of Prisons, there was a group of female officers who got together and sued the agency and won because they weren't being protected. Once again, if you're out on the street, someone's exposing themselves to you, that's a crime. And then when you come work inside, all of a sudden they say, "Oh no, you're supposed to put up with that." There's no reason a female officer should ever have to put up with that. They should be treated the same as any other officer, and they should be treated the same as any woman outside. Just because an inmate wants to get his jollies or whatever goes on there, our officers shouldn't be forced to put up with that as part of the job. There should be consequences to that.
Yeah, and we've stressed that with legislators. Somebody come up here and drop their pants in their office, that guy would go to the county jail and
Yeah.
be charged.
Yeah.
We expect the same treatment for our female
Mm.
correctional officers and correctional staff.
Absolutely.
I mean, they should be held to the same standard. So that's an issue. Now, that's something controversial in the bill, is to create like a sex offender registry for those people exposed, because I'm sure y'all talk about. I mean, a lot of people talk about reentry and stuff like that. The community should know these people are committing these felonies prior to moving in beside you. I mean, like I mentioned off the air, I got a granddaughter that I'd like to know if somebody moves in beside my daughter that presents issues like this, felonious behavior, because they're at risk.
They are sex offenders. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. They are sex offenders. Let's label them as such. Let's let it affect their placement too inside the prison. Sex offenders have points in different, I don't know how Ohio does it specifically, but when you're doing classification, sex offender and continuing to do that behavior should put you in higher level security places, should limit you from certain areas. So absolutely, they need to be called sex offenders for what they are.
Yeah, because my background, I was a unit manager over the sex offender unit in the state of Ohio, so it manifests itself. I mean, that behavior doesn't go away. And if you, how would you say, condone it by not doing nothing, you're going to get more of it.
Sure, you're going to give them permission to do it. Yep.
Yeah, so that's an issue. Another thing was illegal conveyance, because there are concerns with legal conveyance in the facilities. Currently in the state of Ohio, this law would allow, which I don't know in your background, we don't have detaining authority, which
Okay.
that creates a problem. If somebody comes in, if they take off, say a visitor comes in, has drugs, if they leave, DRNC doesn't really have detaining, and currently the state patrol has to be there, which they're out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, these are rural areas, so they may take them 30 minutes to get there, and the person leaves, you can't really detain them. So that's
Right.
part of the deal.
Well, give the listener an example of why that's so important.
Well, if a guy comes in, say a visitor comes in, has fentanyl on
Mm-hmm.
them, they try to go through the metal detector and entry, and the officer catches them. They have to have the authority, at least the captains and the supervisors there, to detain that person. So when a state police comes, they can arrest them and take them to the county jail. And like I said, when I was in Massachusetts, they'll go to the county jail.
Yeah.
They'll put them in jail. So that's part of the deal. Other part is to start having trained dogs. We have trained dogs
Mm-hmm.
in DRNC, but they're used sporadically. And you know how that goes. It's a hit and miss proposition sometimes. And we give you an example. When I was warden at the level 3 and 4 and 5 facility, we didn't have dogs at that time, so we relied on state patrol. Well, they're out on the road. We'd call for one, and sometimes they'd make it, sometimes they wouldn't. And that's not to their. But so part of this law is the mandate that all the level 3 and 4s have a trained dog on site
Nice.
to handle that situation.
Right.
So and then conveyance would apply to anybody. That would be staff, inmates, volunteers, contractors, and that would make that a felony to bring that stuff in,
Okay.
increase that felony. So that's one part of the law. Another thing, kind of go back to it, which Ohio, and I don't blame administrators, but when Andy Lansing passed away, in Ohio, your medical insurance is treated like you separate from service. Like I'm sure you retired from the prison system. I did. You get a COLA thing where you can continue your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
His family got the same thing 5 days after he died on the job, which is very alarming to us.
Yeah.
And frustrating. I tell legislators, just take it out of my check. You know what I mean? Or I'm sure corrections people would, if you're that pressed for money, that they would be willing to donate to that. But reality is, she didn't get that. She found out, she went to her doctor to get a prescription filled. She obviously has some anxiety issues and stress from him dying. And they said, your insurance is no good anymore. Now,
Unbelievable.
private organizations took up her insurance, but our
Yeah.
stance is she shouldn't have to beg and plead. That's part of we protect ourselves and protect our own
Right.
in something like that. So that's part of the law too, is to make that codified in the law where that standard happens.
Absolutely. And I see where it says medical, dental, and vision insurance. That taking care of, I can't imagine what she was going through within those 5 days. And then before you even have a chance to get things lined out, before you even have a chance to, think about how you feel, here's already everything that you had in your life, the money, the insurance, all that stuff being taken away from you. Bam. That's just, we need to take care
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
families. As the families go through as much with a correctional officer who works in corrections. It's a stressful job for families also. We can't forget that, because I know I brought it home for 30 years. You can ask my family. They weren't immune to what I went through and the stresses that I brought home and the way I acted sometimes. I wasn't perfect. And we've got to take care of our families as much as we do the officers. So I'm happy to see that there's something in there specifically for the families to make sure that they're still being taken care of.
yeah. Because I was blessed. I never had to deal with a murder of a staff member as a warden or deputy warden, but I did have some serious injuries because we worked at high security. I had to give you an example. I had a guy get his orbital socket fractured.
Yeah.
It's burned in my brain. I went, I'm sure correction stuff always happens on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So went to the hospital and had to look at this guy's little girl and little boy and his wife, and um, that burns in your brain. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You have to take care of these people, and
Yeah.
and I don't think that's intentional by DRNC or the state, but we just want it written, codified in the law where it basically says you're going to do it. So when
Yeah.
they change administrations, there's no confusion, and they don't have to go through what. And it gets back to this guy. Well, look, he served in the military. He's a kind of a, you back them
Hmm.
and you back corrections people. We have to fix that, and
Yeah.
that's part of that. Now, I don't know how else you want to. I mean, we have got some administrative changes because obviously prisons have gotten off. I mean, we've talked. At least my experience, they've gotten off the beaten track. This rehabilitation at all cost,
Hmm.
and that's not totally true.
Right.
I mean, this bill is not an anti-inmate bill; it's an anti-misbehavior bill.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, uh, if you misbehave, you're going to be dealt with, and that falls into because Ohio's. I mean, let's put it this way: when I was a warden, if you were 7% vacancy rate, you were worried to death. I mean, most of them are running over 10%, and that's how would I say I don't want to say be disrespectful. That's kind of cooking the books because if you work in corrections, you're not counting the people on disability. You're not counting the people that are in training. They're counting a person's got a higher date at the academy. That's not helping that officer on the block to get days off and, not work overtime. So that's something that we think would help with
Yeah.
the turnover.
Oh, I train nationwide. I travel all over the country, and I'm telling you right now, corrections is burnt out. I'm not talking about one officer. I'm not talking about a couple of officers at this joint. I'm talking about corrections is burnt out. They are working so much, so often. They're not getting the breaks. They're not getting relief. They've got vacation and comp time on the books that they can't use. So yeah, anything we can do to make that better, to try to get, which I mean, that's a lot of what we do on this program is talk about the leadership and the training, because throwing money is not going to get you more officers. They've got to, just like this, they've got to feel safe when they go to work. They've got to feel respected. And I think that's a lot of what this law is about. Don't you?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of. I mean, like I said, I talked to a lot, and to get back to your point, I mean, I when I went around to all the prisons, uh, it's alarming when you have a 28-year employee begging you to do something because they're getting mandated. They're not signed up for that. I don't know about you. I'm an older guy. They mandate me 3 days in a row. I probably, for one, I'm not going to be worth a. I'm going to be a subpar staff member because I'm tired. And again, the quality of life. I mean, give you an example. A guy I'm a friend, his son got into it. He got out of it basically because the juvenile place is so volatile that he's got a little kid. He didn't want to be on disability and lose 30% of his pay. So he just got out of corrections, which, that's that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everywhere. So yeah, people's got to wake up. It's just not the money.
No.
I mean, the money's good. I do think they can make some modifications. I'm sure your audience can relate. Retirement, they've ate away at retirement. Like when I first started, 30 years and out, and you got medical benefits. Now you got to do basically 35 or 55, and you don't get your medical benefits. So basically, people are just voting with their feet. They're going to Amazon. They're going to somewhere else, and we're losing quality people because of that. To keep on this law, I don't know what else you want to. I mean, we'll talk about security reforms. Now, this has been controversial on high, and I don't know where every statewide or nationwide. We're saying go to no contact visiting at level 3, 4, and 5. Because if you've ever worked in prisons, again, the people at level 3, 4, and 5 are there for misbehavior.
Mm-hmm.
If they do stay out of trouble, they have access to drop their security level down. And I'm sure you worked in prisons and your audience worked in prison. There's a lot of lifers at level 2s
Mm-hmm.
that are well behaved. They've dropped down based on their behavior in prison.
Mm-hmm.
prison administrator, I'd take them guys every day of the week because they're pretty well behaved, but then there's others that all they do is create chaos.
Right.
And they have to be addressed. And to talk to an officer at one of the higher security places, he basically told me everybody comes to visit here or bringing drugs in.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, that's the reason they're here. Because,
Yep.
and I can relate as a warden and administrator, level 3s and 4s, you're constantly busting people bringing stuff in. Level 1s and 2s, a lot of times you got to know that because, like London, the entry was everybody would come in the entry. You got, you know, I was there 10 years, you got to know visitors, and actually you could tell them they're canceled that day and they would never give you any grief.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's something.
Well, technology's made that easier too because we can do video visits now. We don't have to have.
Well,
yeah.
Jails in Ohio basically do that. They have no contact visiting. They basically, you do the video visit or you have a screen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, window screen, and you do that. Now, something else that's controversial a little bit in Ohio that's in this bill is we're restricting the tablets, inmate tablets, personal tablets. I don't know if that's every state's doing that yet, but in Ohio, every inmate gets a personal tablet.
Right.
That's a double-edged sword. The administrator, if somebody's worked in the units a lot, it's kind of, we talked about yesterday a little bit, the TVs, it serves as a pacifier and keeps them out of the day rooms and keeps them constructively busy. We say eliminate personal tablets at level 3, 4, and 5. Again, it's based on behavior. Reality is they're what they call jailbreaking them. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You probably heard that a few times, but what they'll do is they'll get a cell phone in, get a hotspot developed, break that tablet, and basically get free reign. Ohio, we just had a big case out of Muskingum County. It was the biggest contraband case in the prisons I've ever seen in my 39 years. They were actually dropping stuff in the yard and relaying the grid coordinates to other inmates.
Yeah.
And
dropping it
you
with
as
a
a
drone.
correctional. Yeah. So just think how dangerous that is and how problematic. You're talking fentanyl, cell phones, tune, K2s, a major deal right now, which created chaos in that. And our frustration of that is they've taken it to the point where, you know, they take them to segregation. And if you talk to administrators and people, they just break these tablets at level 3 and 4, and the state ends up, you know, officer becomes a tablet manager, which is not what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be providing security and making sure things get done. So that's something. And at level 1 and 2, we're comfortable with. And my background, we had them before I left. 1s and 2s, most of those guys, they don't give you any problems with them. You know, they use them appropriately. Now, there's a few, you know, that do. Some of the older guys actually wouldn't even take them. They didn't even want the responsibility because they wasn't going to use them. You know what I mean? We're all right with that, but focus on that perspective.
Right. So where's the pushback coming from? You said it's not popular. Who's pushing back on this?
Well, I don't know. We're talking to legislators. I mean, some administrators, you know, it's one of those things of, I mean, I've been out since 2019, out of the joint. If you don't know what it was like before, you don't know, you know, a lot of administrators are getting into, they've never had managed a prison without tablets. So
Right.
that's one thing. And some of the providers, obviously, it's a moneymaker for them.
Absolutely.
But, you know, it creates a big problem, especially if you jailbreak, because you can monitor those phones, but the increased volume of the calls plus, you know, just the access makes it harder for investigators to nail that down. I don't know if you've been following in Tennessee. They basically said that was part of the deal with that officer getting, I don't know if you've seen that articles on that. Officer was recently murdered in Tennessee. I guess some inmates have made threats via phone, but they didn't catch him because of the volume of them calls.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, in Ohio, most of the time you have one investigator and a gang coordinator is part-time, basically. investigate, and they're going to go through 2,400 inmates' calls. That makes 10 or 20 calls a day. There's not enough time in a day. So that's an issue. We're saying just base that on behavior and eliminate them at level 3 and 4s, because we used to put them on the walls and guys got access to them. And like you said, they got video visits, got access to that. It's just not in their cells, and it's harder for them to manipulate them for bad behavior.
Yeah, communication, people don't realize communication outside the prison is such a security problem for us. Last year, Idaho inmate he coordinated an outside assault on a medical trip. He told him when he was going to go out because he faked an injury. He told them how they were going to be armed, which hospital, and so they assaulted the crew when they got to the hospital, and that was all coordinated over phones that had been, illegal phones, cell phones had been dropped in the prison. People think, oh, well, they're just making calls. No, they're running businesses. They're putting hits on people outside the prison. They're making drug deals. They're doing drone drops. Everything you can imagine. All that illegal activity is because of these illegal cell phones inside. And tablets can do the same thing.
Yeah, because like I said, you can jailbreak them and basically get a Wi-Fi connection.
Sure.
And they're just like me and you made a call yesterday. I mean, it's not, I know the federal government's working on how to reduce that, but at the same
They're not
time,
working
again,
very fast.
no. And, like you said, and there's another case I remember in South Carolina where they made a threat via the phones and tablets. Sure. It's a risk. And again, it gets back to attrition. Who wants to sign up for that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Who wants to work in a job that they can, you're going out for transport? How many times I never thought of that. I used to go on transports. I never thought that they're going to notify somebody. I mean, obviously you're always on your P's and Q's when you took somebody to a local hospital, but at the same time, you didn't expect it to be prearranged.
Right.
And puts people at risk, and that eats away at the staffing. They're like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And we've had people, get threats like, I mean, they can hack onto Facebook. I had a situation before I retired that an officer didn't do nothing inappropriately, but inmate found her on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Legal cell phone.
Sure.
And tried to put the press on her. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And she reported it, which thankfully, she's worried about her job. And I'm like, well, no, you did the right thing. You know what I mean? We're going to deal with that guy. But that's additional stressor on staff that's not necessary.
Right.
So that's a thing, the personal tablets. So that's been kind of beat up a little bit. And, there a lot of folks are arguing, well, they can provide education and stuff like that. Well, just provide it and pick it back up from them. You know what I mean? If education, my grandkids go to school, they have Chromebooks and stuff like that. They use stuff in class. They don't, treat them the same way.
Sure.
I mean, prisoners.
Yeah.
Now, another controversial one is, now, do you got any questions on that? Another controversial one.
I'm ready for the next one, I think.
Is eliminating college at level 3 and 4.
Okay. Nope, that wasn't the one I was
3,
thinking.
4, and 5. So that's controversial. Obviously, colleges are making money off that. Our thought is to, if you're going to restrict that, 3s and 4s, high is just wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those guys aren't graduating or getting in trouble. 1s and 2s again. And I can relate to that on both. I mean, as a case manager, I was a case manager, higher security and lower security. I always use the example, level 1s and 2s, if you had a program, the guys were waiting on you when you got there. And guess what? They were mad if you could call in sick or, they wanted to come to the program. 3s and 4s, you'd start with 30, knowing you're going to finish. You're going to be lucky to finish with 10.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to end up getting in trouble or decide to go to a basketball game or do whatever. That's just the nature of the beast. And we're saying, hey, don't, focus that education on, and I talked to legislators. I told, said, I'd rather them just give you $1,000 to go down to the local university and just hand it out to kids that are actually working 2 jobs.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, put that money where it'll do the most good. Yeah,
Yeah.
and make them earn it inside. If you want education at those levels inside, let somebody else pay for it. Why should I, as a taxpayer, pay for an inmate to get a college education inside? I have a high school diploma. I just did however many years, 30 inside
Yeah.
with a high school diploma. Work ethic, the things that are missing in their life have nothing to do with whether or not they have read Henry David Thoreau. That's not what
Well,
they need. They need work ethic. They need an alarm clock. They need somebody to mentor them and show them how to take care of their life. They don't need these college
Well, it's funny
classes.
you say that. I had a lot of conversations with people, and I've been blessed. I mean, I earned a master's degree eventually, but I had a lot of conversation with people that they come to work, and I'm like, because a couple of people got offended because we didn't promote them. I mean, one example, the lady I promoted she graduated from high school, but I can relate. We promote her because she shows up all the time. She does the job. As an administrator, you keep track of what they're doing, and towards the end of the month, you would have to prod the people that can't get the stuff done. And I told the guy that was complaining that basically I don't have to. She's never on the list.
Yeah,
So why would I promote you over her when you're on the list every time? I got to call. So if you can't handle the job you're doing, I'm going to triple your job responsibilities. Basically, I told him, if you don't show up, that thing ain't worth the
yeah,
paper's printed on.
yeah,
I mean, because we need people, not certificates on the wall.
yeah, yeah. If somebody wants to pay for an inmate's correspondence courses with college, all the churches, all the volunteer organizations, you are welcome to do that. But I don't think my tax money should pay for. And I'll tell you, a perfect
Yeah.
example was Inmate Fountain. Inmate Fountain killed his drill sergeant, killed at least 2 inmates while he was inside, and then killed a federal correctional officer. And we had a religious organization who paid for him to get his master's degree in theology. Why? I don't want taxpayers ever to pay for that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm at the same. I mean, yeah. There's not somebody. I mean, what's the point of the exercise of giving a murderer a higher education when he's never getting out? Give it to the kid down the street here that is not in the best situation, that's trying. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, I don't want to get long-winded, but we had internships with our correctional inspection committee. Had a young lady that was going to high state, obviously not from a rich background. You're not probably not familiar with High, but High Street runs close to High. All the kids get jobs at the restaurants and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
She called me and worried that great employee I'd hired today. She called me and said she can't make it. I went, why? And she said somebody broke her window. She was working at the restaurant and somebody broke her window. Well, to somebody like that, $700 window might as well be $10,000
Sure.
because she had to take a day off of work, lost the pay, had to pay for something she didn't have the money for. And yeah, give it to her. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Let her have that money.
Build a playground
She's
with it.
trying. Yeah. So I'm getting on my, but Ohio, we talked about a little bit yesterday. They've even softened, because as a minister, the rules in Ohio used to be if you get in college, if you have to stay 1 year clear of rule infractions. That
Mm-hmm.
means anything. You know what I mean? Now they've got it where it's 30 days and you have to have been in restrictive housing to lose your college ability to attend, which you know as well as I do. If you worked in prisons, eggs are always full. So there's guys that should be in SEG, you just don't have no room for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to college because I always use this. I mean, I'll give you another example. Was when I was a warden, we would offer it at level 1, 2. London, a guy caught me. He got kicked out of the program. Of course, they leave the important part out. He said, well, they kicked me out for no reason. I'm like, well, why was that? He said, well, me and an officer got in an argument last night. I said, we got a bingo. You know what I mean? Why would I put you in? I said, what did the officer ask you to do? He said, well, he asked me to stand for count. I'm like, well, That's in the rules. Guess what? I'll write him up if he didn't do that. You know what I mean? He's just doing his job. So why would I reward you for trying to get him fired?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that sounds ridiculous. I said, well, don't do it next time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll be all right. And I think that's where we got to get back to that is it's all about behavior.
Right. Right.
Prisons are easy to manage. Inmates want that.
They do. They want the rules to be across the board. The only inmates that don't want that are the ones who are trying to get around the rules.
Yeah, the chaos agents, that's not I'm sure being a snitch is not a good thing in prison, but you're walking in the yard of guys, say, hey, sell so-and-so, Mr. Noble. Because, you build a rapport with guys working 34 years that they trust you and like, hey, you got to do something with this guy because he's going to end up. And, and I've always told legislators and that if you don't do that, you're making the criminals.
Yeah.
And guess what? A guy that does felony assault, how's he handle problems?
Mm-hmm.
He felony
physically.
assaults.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't do it, they're going to do it. And it's not going to be the way you want it.
Yeah. Hit this executive qualifications. I find this interesting.
Well, in Ohio, that's the legislature. Actually, one of the legislators, he's a retired patrol officer, lieutenant. So in Ohio, there's no, codified job description for a director of prisons.
Mm-hmm.
The parole superintendent, there's very specific, and that's where that came from.
Sure.
After this thing, the director's a nice lady, dealt with, it's just, she didn't have the background to run, it gets back to that. Not everybody can be rehabilitated.
Right.
I think you need somebody that knows reality. I always use, with legislators, why are we putting Charles Manson through college? It doesn't make me understand the math here. You know what I mean? So this executive qualifications is requiring somebody to have a level 3 background, at least 3 years. And, that helps because they're two different facilities. A level 1, working at them, they're two different diverse facilities. Your rehabilitation's happening at 1 and 2s, not 3s and 4s.
I'm going to read this real quick, this little section here. This reform increases accountability and ensures correctional policies are guided by expertise and experience, not by a political appointee with limited to no background and experience in the field of corrections. The requirement for the director to meet specific professional qualifications. I like that. Professional qualifications in corrections means that you have been there, done that you've seen it, that you've worked inside, in my world. So I really love the way that's written. It is something that's going on across the country. We've got, if you go back, we didn't have as many political appointees. They usually came up through the job. But now we're having people who are chasing political goals getting appointed into those jobs. So I would love to see us go back to having administrators that came up through the ranks that know what it's like to sit in a chair and watch inmates in a seg unit in a broken chair, and what prison smells like and what it's like to be attacked. I think it would change the way they administrate.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's nothing like experiencing it. I think it's gotten, and Ohio's gotten that. It's a lot of political things, and that doesn't help. That's why we have vacancies. Mm-hmm. That's why we have chaos in prisons. Our juvenile facility is absolutely off the hook.
Yeah.
How anybody can work there. I've worked 39 years in the system. I don't think I can make it a weekend.
No.
Because there's no accountability and they just keep ignoring it. It's not there. Well, as they ignore it, people, I'll give you an example. Another example, we were up there in the administration. Like I said, when you're working the system a long time, people rely on you to speak for them. And the older lady was like, well, I'm getting mandated multiple times and I can't do it. I'm working to put my kids through private school. I
Right.
got 2 more years. I don't think I can do it. You got to help us. You know what I mean? So I brought it up at our closing. They said that, well, she's not mandated. Well, as we went to the Alley Institution, she's in the control center, and they told me that she's not mandated. She volunteered. Well, she volunteered, so she didn't get mandated.
Right.
That's a mandation to me. You know what I mean? But that's being dishonest. You know what I mean? Anybody, I'm sure you, when you called and froze somebody, it wasn't a voluntary, or you asked them, hey, if they're going to work. I had to, hey, we're asking you to work now. We're going to call you back 10 minutes and make you work. We don't have a choice.
Or you could volunteer for one of the jobs that's open, or I'll mandate you for the one that's left.
That's what she does.
Yeah, that's not a
so
choice.
She can see her grandkids stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. That's the person you want to keep.
Absolutely.
I mean, the person that's taking care of their grandkids, that's who you want to interact with, kids. But that's part of that, just the qualifications. And, I don't know how you feel in the country. They talk about more transparency. It's got less. I think political people have political ramifications.
Yes.
I can tell you as a warden and deputy, was there stuff we did stupid or staff member did something stupid? But somebody would reach out, and that's public information, to slow walk that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's become more transparent. And something I would like to go back to that education. I talked about that big drug bust. The rules have been watered down so much. One of those guys was a big influencer in that drug situation, sitting at Ross Correctional right now in college at state taxpayers' expense, where Andy Lansing got killed a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And it blows your mind. Absolutely blows your mind.
It's just,
I'm not the smartest guy, but that, CO that starts today walks in some kids like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Because that, like drugs, I tell legislators, somebody bringing in fentanyl risk the front entry officer's life, the visiting officer's life, obviously the person bringing it in. Everybody that comes in touch with that.
Sure. The officer searching his cell. I mean, everybody
could get killed. Well, we had a situation like that where
so is the Bureau.
6 officers went to the hospital over that.
The Bureau of Prisons lost an officer a couple of years ago from fentanyl exposure. Yeah,
and it's frustrating. Real. Isn't that enough?
Absolutely. Why do we keep allowing it?
Yeah, isn't that enough to say? I'm sure that person had family, had friends. They're not, and go back to why we called this Andy Lansing. I mean, nice guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We said we'd want to sit down, drink a beer with, and talk about the good. I mean, I can tell you to relate to time I met him. I took a legislator down because death row's down there, and he was working, and he was in the infantry, and I was in the infantry, and obviously he was giving me a hard time about that. Guys do that all the time. You know what I mean? Like, well, I don't think you were cutting the mustard as much. He was giving me a hard time, but that's the kind of people we want working, and can't relate that inmates want that. They want order. They want ramifications. They can't rehabilitate if they don't. I mean, like drugs are flooding the system. If you're a drug addict and you're putting a cell with a guy's got a bunch of drugs, that's not helping your situation at all.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, the reason I wanted you on here is because it's so important what you're doing. It's so important not only to memorialize Andy through this. I never met Andy Lansing, but I've seen pictures of him. I've heard stories of him. He just looks like a happy guy. We know he was a veteran. We know he was a good correctional officer from all the stories I've heard from people that worked around him. And for you guys to memorialize his memory from what is a murder by an inmate and change that for the future correctional officers, to change some of these things that may or may not have contributed, but they're all issues that need to be addressed. They're all issues that have directly to do with the safety of the people who work, specifically in Ohio. Now, I wish that some of this would spread across the country. I really do. I wish other agencies would take this example in Ohio and do it. I think our officers would feel safer. I think they would feel more respected if some of these laws were put in place. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing and what everybody else. I want you to go back and tell all the people you're working with how much a lot of correctional officers really appreciate what you guys are doing, even if it is just for Ohio right now. Maybe you'll set the standard and maybe that'll grow.
Oh, I reach it. Say thanks, Mark Johnson's a state rep,
Mm-hmm.
and Phil Plummer, he's a state rep.
Okay.
He's a retired sheriff, so he kind of understands. Hats off to both of them for pushing this. And I'm like you. I hope it goes. I mean, I've been to a lot of New York. They need help.
Yeah.
Michigan needs help. I mean, these are young folks starting their careers. I want them to have a successful career like I did.
Sure.
Be safe.
Yeah. So in the notes, I will put a link to, you think it's okay if I put a link to the
Yes,
two?
actually, I'm a long talker. I don't know if you noticed that. I thought I wrote it down. People are listening. If they want to reach out to Senator Nathan Manning,
Okay.
Ohio Senate, he's the head of the Judiciary Committee. We've had our first hearing on it. I mean, it passed with 3 no votes in the high house. So that
Great.
tells you across the board. The Senate, it goes to committee hearings. It's went to the first hearing, but it has to go to at least 2 more. And we're wanting it to be pushed through so this gets on the books.
Yep.
Because we've had people get injured, like at survivor's benefits. We don't want some staff member to have to live that again.
No.
But you can reach out, to Nathan Manning, Ohio Senate. I had it written down here.
That's okay. I'll get it and we'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll email you the name and address or the number, the email, but reach out to him and other corrections people throughout we've had a few folks from different states, talk to us about it. It's a start, but we have to do stuff for these correctional people. I mean, I'm sure you're everywhere, all over the country. It's just not in Ohio. I mean, these folks do the Lord's work. We have to support them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on here, Jeff. I appreciate it. I know everybody's going to love hearing about this. I'll get with you and make sure we get all the information put in the show notes. So, guys, when you get done, go down to the show notes. Those will be the links that you need to contact the people who are working so hard on this. If you haven't done it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you know the next time we've got somebody on. Hope you have a great day, Jeff.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate you taking the time and appreciate your service to the corrections community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.